This is Impact with Don Wenner.
Hey everyone, Don Wenner here, founder and CEO of DLP Capital and host of the Impact Podcast. I'm truly excited to present to you this podcast. On episode 1, we have Bo Parfet on the show. Bo is an experienced senior executive, the chief growth officer at DLP, and has built a successful career as a finance leader, as an entrepreneur, as an impact investor, and a philanthropist. He was born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in economics from the Colorado State University. Early in his career, Bo was an investment banker at J.P. in New York City. 7 years later, Bo co-founded the Denali Venture Philanthropy to fuse his business experience with his desire to make a global impact. In addition, Bo has climbed the 7 summits and wrote a book called Die Trying, which was fueled by his desire to make an impact. The key takeaways from this episode are, number 1, how DLP and our leaders are committed to philanthropy and impact investing. Number 2, how you can make a huge impact and still make money. These things are not mutually exclusive. Number 3, what are the 4 crises that DLP is impacting? And 4th, the topic of BHAGs, or Big, Hairy, Audacious Goals. What is DLP's BHAG and how this podcast ties in, and the importance of having your own BHAG. So let's get into my conversation with Bo Parfet. All right, so Don Wenner here with my guest today, in our first ever episode of Impact is our own DLP's own Bo Parfet. Welcome, Bo.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for having me.
Well, excellent, Bo. I couldn't have thought of a better guest to kick off this podcast, and I'd love for anybody here listening in who doesn't already know a little bit about your history and background, Bo, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, and as an impact investor. I'd love to kind of turn the floor to you and just hear a little bit about your backstory and share some of the exciting things you've done with our listeners.
Sure. Thanks, Don. Somebody once said there's the 2 most important moments in your life: the moment you're born and the moment you know why. And that statement struck me when I first heard it, and it stayed with me throughout my life. And I remember when I first started to embark on trying to have an impact on the planet, I was working for J.P. in New York City. I was probably 50 pounds overweight, maybe more like 60. And I was working 100 hours a week, and I wanted to go climb Kilimanjaro. And I was talking to a managing director about it, and he kind of looked at me, this kind of overweight, call it chubby young adult. And he looked at me and he said, "If you're going to Kilimanjaro to lose weight or just climb this mountain for yourself," he goes, "you're not going to make it." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he kind of, joked around a little bit, and he goes, "You're working 100 hours a week." But he goes, "Bo, you will make it if you do it for something bigger than yourself." And that was a huge aha moment for me. It was an awakening moment for me, because I thought about that a lot. And I said, wow, you know what? So I did decide to do it for something bigger than myself. So I decided to do a fundraising, which is a great way to kind of embark on having an impact. So I did a fundraising event, and we raised capital to fund 2 poor people from Africa to become doctors. Wow. And we did it. And it was a lot of fun. And if I weren't doing it for them, he is right. I wouldn't have made it. Kilimanjaro, when you're overweight and out of shape, is a very challenging mountain. So I owe that person a lot of thanks and gratitude.
Awesome. That's a great story and a great example of impact. And I want to come back in a moment to some of the creative ways you've been able to make an impact through your philanthropy over these last many years. But I think that's a great lead in, though, Bo, to making an impact in the areas we're looking to make an impact here through this podcast. And, we've narrowed in on 4 pretty big crises here in America and around the world that we want to make an impact on at DLP. And through this podcast, while at the same time inspiring and motivating, giving different ways to think about impact to anybody listening who may have a very different crisis or focus that they want to make an impact on. But the the four that we've decided to focus in here on DLP are first, housing, the immense crisis that's growing daily of the challenge of people affording housing in America today, local working families being able to afford to live where they work, and it's a crisis that's been magnified and grown tremendously over this past year through COVID, and is getting worse every day. The crisis of jobs, which there's many components of that. The crisis of legacy, which is a pretty interesting one, and one, Bo, that you've really helped DLP and me really come to find and start putting some interesting things into play, including our prosperity membership we'll probably touch on here today into place. And then last, which maybe ties this all together, Bo, is the happiness crisis. Excited, and we'll probably get a chance here to dive into each of these a little bit here. But what's really exciting on this podcast is over the episodes ahead, we've decided to break these seasons of this podcast into a season around each of these areas of impact, with the first season going to be around the jobs crisis. But, we're confident we're going to be able to interweave these crisis together into our discussions, and we're bringing on authors and economists and business owners and entrepreneurs and a lot of different people with different perspectives on how we can together make an impact, and couldn't be more excited about it. And with that said, Bo, I'd love maybe turn to you, and anything you want to follow up on that would be great, but love to hear a little bit about how you've been making an impact here even prior to joining DLP.
Sure. Happy to. And I just want to say, Don, I love working for DLP, and I hear this all the time. Don Wenner, he's the next Sam Zell, but he has this kind of Bill Gates disposition. I hear it all the time. So, and again, I'm honored, and it's an honor and privilege to work here. So thank you for having me on here again. And I look forward to digging into this topic. So one of the things that people, Don, you and I have a close friend named Ron Cordes, and Ron Cordes said to us, the furthest distance in the universe is the distance between your head and your heart. And when you look at making an impact or making an investment, your heart, when you hear about a nonprofit and the great work they're doing or their mission or what they want to try to, cause or fix, you can't find your checkbook fast enough. You want to write the check. Hey, let's help out. And then your head gets involved and says, well, wait a minute. What kind of impact are they having? Is everything going to, the executive salary? How long have they been in business? Are they going to be in business next year? So there's all these thoughts that kind of go back and forth. And what's really neat is, impact is kind of the merging of the two, of your head and your heart. Yes, you can have an impact, and yes, you can make a return. And I wanted, and there's a couple things that we've done that I'm happy to share about. But one of the things that we've done as a family in a very small, humble way, is we've made an investment in DLP, because DLP is having a big impact. Don, when you think about your head and your heart and the four crises that DLP is trying to solve, maybe list those so the audience can hear those, and kind of how do you think about bringing those together?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So we set out, we launched our foundation, and want to hear a little bit about yours here, Bo. It's pretty interesting what you've been doing, but we launched our foundation here at DLP called the DLP Positive Returns Foundation a few years ago. And we decided that we were going to have a giving policy here at DLP, and we would give 1% of all of our time. So every employee, every team member at DLP can give 1% of their time, which works out to be about 3 days a year, towards any service project, any area of impact or giving they want to do. We also give 0.25% of our revenue and 0.25% of our capital we raise. And as we're growing really fast here and moving towards our big, hairy, audacious goal, maybe we'll talk about, we realize, wow, this is great. And, we're going to be able to make an impact to the tune of soon, we're hitting now, $1 million plus a year in capital that's going into the foundation, which is, pretty cool. And at our pace of growth, soon that'll be 2 million or 3 million or 4 million of money a year that we can use to make an impact on some really great, organizations and causes like you talked about there, Bo. But all of a sudden it hit me, and this is kind of how things tend to be, and this is what we want to help a lot of you listeners here help you do. Is I started realizing, wait a second. So I have this ability here off of basically my platform, our platform, DLP. I have this ability to take a little bit, basically 0.25% of kind of what we have and go and do good with it, right? And go make an impact with that money and help, mainly we were focused on two main causes initially, help people who have challenges with affordable housing and help people, obtain jobs in this environment where many jobs are being automated and we have a lot of, unemployment issues and so for long-term unemployment, et cetera. And that felt really good. And we're starting to help people on in a number of different ways, but quickly, have come to the realization that, wait a second, my real platform to make an impact, the real ability I have is not through the DLP Positive Returns Foundation, which is doing a lot of really cool things, but it's on a larger scale through all of the investments that we make at DLP. We now have 1,700 plus families, invested, including your family, Bo, into our funds, and be able to take all of that capital, our $1.4 billion in AUM and growing rapidly, be able to use all of that money to make an impact on the crisis of, workforce affordable housing, the crisis of jobs, the crisis of legacy, which is an interesting one, and of happiness. We can do that using the whole platform, 425 employees and growing, 1,700 families, hundreds of real estate operators and developers and builders that we're working with to make a much larger impact on these four crises, and help through this podcast and through the event that we're doing, Bo, here in just a few days, really be able to make an impact and help inspire others to make impacts on causes beyond the big four that we're focused on. It's pretty exciting times here, to say the least.
I love it. And maybe for the audience, do you want to list the four crises that we're trying to solve?
Yeah, so I'd love to. So the first one, maybe, for those of you familiar with DLP, the most obvious one is housing. And that's, DLP is a real estate company at our core, and a real estate company that focuses on workforce housing. So, we're focused on investing in workforce housing that is and will remain affordable to the local workforce. So right now we're in a situation where there's a growing percentage, roughly half of Americans are cost burdened, meaning they're spending more than 30% of their gross income on rent. And over 25% of people are spending more than half of their gross income on rent. And those percentages are growing rapidly. The average cost of housing in America, rental housing in America, has gone up over 70% in the past decade. And the pace is increasing, not decreasing, especially since COVID. So it's a major crisis, and one that's pretty complex. But there's some ways that we know we can make a tremendous impact there, and are right now through DLP, through our investment funds, and through the partnerships with our investors and operators. The second crisis we're focused on is jobs. Right now we're faced, especially through COVID, some challenges with, unemployment, especially long-term, and underemployment as well. But coming ahead is we're about to go through this age, and we're in the beginning stage of this age of, automation, which creates, incredible increases in productivity. And I think it's a really exciting time. Many people think about it from a point of fear to say, well, through all this automation, we're going to automate out, millions of jobs, right? There's going to be millions of cashiers and tellers who no longer have jobs as cashiers and tellers in the near future, right? And so many industries that are being disrupted. But the exciting thing is that this is an opportunity for entrepreneurial small businesses to create new jobs. And but that's what's going to take, is entrepreneurial small businesses to come in here and create new jobs, to repurpose the workforce into new opportunities. That's an exciting. It's exciting to be a part of that, and that's, as Bo, why we wrote Building an Elite Organization is really helping entrepreneurial small businesses be able to grow and scale and create new jobs. And the third crisis, and I want to let you talk about this one, Bo, is legacy. And this is how really our relationship really grew, is around looking to make an impact on this underlying crisis of generational wealth crisis here. And so why don't you explain this one a little bit, Bo?
Sure, sounds good. So this is the third crisis we're trying to solve, is the legacy crisis, or the generational wealth crisis. And we have one more to go, so stay tuned. So the legacy crisis, for many of the listeners, this will be new to them. For many of the listeners, they may have heard something like this before. But depending on what piece of research that you want to source, on average, there's about a 70 to 90% chance that the hard work, the wealth that a generation one makes is squandered by the second or third generation. A 70 to 90% chance of that happening. And that is an absolute crisis. It should be the opposite. So there's a whole host of reasons on why that occurs. I'm going to say that communication is probably the biggest culprit. And it's tough having those types of challenging conversations with generation one, generation two, generation three. The divorce rate is high in America. That causes, some consternation in families. So one of the really cool things that we're doing at DLP is we have our prosperity conferences, our prosperity membership conferences and events. We have one coming up in Asheville, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. But these are, of our many investors, they're coming with a growth mindset, and they don't want that to happen. They don't want their hard work, their blood, sweat, and tears to be squandered. And there are best practices and proven methodologies that you can follow to ensure that is very unlikely. How about that? So we're looking forward to dig into that here in the second weekend in July in Asheville.
Yeah, Bo, and maybe we'll touch on this a bit more, but I like to summarize this legacy crisis as, we're helping people live and leave a legacy, and avoiding that generational wealth crisis, and the fact that shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves, in 3 generations, the fact that many families' wealth is squandered, as you said, by the second or third generation is an important part of that, but also helping people be able to live and leave a legacy and enjoy the wealth and make an impact with that wealth is a big part of it as well. Understand what your purpose is, what your family's goals are, and be able to align and communicate as a family around where we want to make an impact. And that's a big part of what this podcast is about, is helping you figure out whether it's joining us on making an impact on these 4 crises, or maybe something completely different, but thinking about your wealth, thinking about your platform, thinking about your family, and how you can make an impact above and beyond just through your tithing or your giving. And that leads into the fourth crisis here, which really in many ways pulls these all together, which is what we call the happiness crisis. And we're focused on helping people achieve prosperity through the pursuit of happiness. And this starts with helping people build deep relationships with their creator, with our creator. From there, establishing a connection, clear purpose, and understanding and connecting what they do and where they spend their time, again, with making an impact. And finally, around a clear understanding and implementation of what we call living fully, which leads to achieving fulfillment, significance, and turning happiness into prosperity. And to maybe bring that home a little bit more is, right now, somewhere around 50% of Americans are struggling with some form of mental illness, with the largest being depression. And somewhere, depending on which statistic you look at, somewhere around 40% of Americans struggle with depression. Many people today combat the feelings of unimportance, of inadequacy, and a lack of connection. And social media and some of today's forms of trying to create connections have only magnified this problem. And the way I think about it is, past generations, we had a connection between our career, our work, with our feeling of importance, our feeling of value. And because people today only stay at their jobs for a few years on average, and people even change career paths again and again, less and less people are getting that feeling of connection and value and significance to themselves from their work, and are out searching for a form of connection. And it's a major challenge that many are suffering with. Hence, as I said before, 40% of people are struggling with depression, and we believe it doesn't need to be that way. And I challenge anybody listening here who's a leader or a business owner to accept that it's our responsibilities as leaders of organizations to combat this happiness crisis by investing in our people, investing in our team members and our employees, investing in them to live fully and be great, not just for you and your organization, but be great fathers, mothers, daughters, sisters, leaders in their church, but to be able to live fully. So it's pretty exciting. Hopefully you can tell listening here the amount of energy and passion that Bo and I and the 400 plus team members here at the LP have on making an impact on these crises. So Bo, you alluded to already the event we have coming up in Asheville, the second week in July, and talk a little bit about that. Talk about this event that we have coming up and how this is a part of our platform here to be able to make an impact on these crises.
Absolutely, I'm going to dig into that question. I had one quick thought I wanted to share about the last one. So crisis number 3, again, is the generational wealth crisis or the legacy crisis. And crisis number 4 is the happiness crisis. And 3 and 4 are linked. Frankly, all 4 of them are linked. But 3 and 4 are really linked, are closely linked, because one of the a best practice or a proven methodology for families to kind of ensure kind of generational success, one thing that brings them together is doing good, doing something bigger than yourself. To circle back to the first part of this podcast, when my managing director said, "Bo, if you're going to do something that's really hard and you're doing it for something bigger than yourself, you're basically going to have more energy than you can possibly imagine." So for generation 1, 2, and 3 to get together and do impact investing, and I mean that it brings you a lot of joy and meaning in your life, and it makes you happier. And if you look at some of the great leaders, MLK, Teddy Roosevelt, Helen Keller, Churchill, they all had meaning in their life. They had a purpose. And when you have a purpose, generally speaking, you're happier. You have more joy in your life. So just wanted to add that piece in, try to link in crisis number 3 and 4 connected.
Bo, before you jump into the event, there was such great comments there. I think about it as, we have 4 crises we're focused on here. And I like to use, sports analogies to things. And I think of it when I can make an impact on all 4 of these crises at the same time, that's a home run, right? All 4 at the same time. Anytime we can do that is a tremendous opportunity. And maybe the best way to summarize kind of what we're doing here at DLP is, we're focused on creating legacies that leads to happiness through the creating of jobs and housing that is affordable. And that's kind of sums up kind of what DLP's whole business model, our whole strategy is. And it's pretty exciting, being a part of this right now and realizing as we grow this platform, the amount of impact we can make, and not, again, just for the crisis we're focused on, but helping provide insight and direction, inspiration, to others to do so. Because who we're talking to here, Bo, in this podcast, most of our listeners are going to fall into the criteria of simply movers and shakers. Those who are leaders and drive results and get things done. These are our listener base and largely our client base are first generation wealth creators, leaders of their family. They are founders and CEOs and executives of growing entrepreneurial organizations, people who've been able to generate success because they get things done. They see opportunity and they go out and drive results. And being able to see opportunity, not just from being able to make a profit, but seeing the opportunity to make a profit while also doing good, which is what impact investing is all about. You're not sacrificing profit to do good. You're not, sacrificing doing good to make a profit. You're doing both at the same time, and they're actually contributing to one another to not only do good for a fellow man and for these men's causes, but make a great profit for yourself and your family at the same time. And it's pretty exciting, and it's how I like to think about a lot of what the events that we do are all about. So Bo, tell us a bit more about the upcoming event, how that ties in with the podcast.
Absolutely. And this is very important for the listeners here. So many listeners, not all, but many listeners you're probably thinking, man, how do I have an impact? Okay. So in terms of doing impact investing, there are some things that you should consider. The first one is you absolutely have to have a growth mindset and a creative mindset. And at a big picture, there's kind of two ways to think about things. One is returns, and one is the impact causes or missions. So we will talk about this at the conference coming up. But when you go to the conference and you have this framework, I think it'll help the listeners and the people that are going to attend this conference or our next conference in November in Ponte Vedra. So you can look at it and say, okay, from an impact standpoint, returns. So there's a range of kind of the returns. And there's no wrong answer. So some people want to maximize the impact, but they want to get a modest or below market return. So there's a bunch of people in that bucket. And then there's another bucket where people want balance. They want market returns, and they also want below market returns and kind of high and low impact in both of those categories. That's fair too. Another category is people that are going for market rate returns in the impact space. Okay, so those are the three buckets. And then another big picture strategy or category for people is to talk about the impact or mission. So some people like to do impact investing in a cause or a mission that's very important to them. So clean water, energy, women's issues, poverty in developing countries, or the housing crisis in America. All these are important causes and important missions. And some people like to just pick one. Some people like to have a balanced kind of view or portfolio. So at DLP and our upcoming conference, you're going to learn about kind of how all these things kind of go together. And I think that our returns are very favorable. And I think that our impact is incredible. And when people attend this conference, they're going to learn more about that. And let's talk about some of the impacts that we're actually having at DLP. So let's go. So Don, by the numbers, maybe share with the audience, how many, some of our impacts, some of the stats, how many dwellings are we providing for people, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, thank you, Bo. And so our recently sort of relaunched goal here. I'll start with the goal, and then I'll tell you what we've been doing is our BHAG, which we mentioned earlier, Bo, stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. It's our big goal right now around the organization, which is to become a Fortune 500 company through the achievement of our mission, which is our mission is to positively impact 5 million lives through providing 500,000 solutions. And to date, we're at about 47,000 solutions, and we've impacted over 450,000 lives through the services we provide at DLP. That includes providing people with safe and affordable, workforce housing. That includes helping investors live and leave a legacy. That includes the job creation that we're able to provide directly and indirectly through our memberships with great real estate operators and developers and builders, and the loans that we make to them. So it's pretty exciting. We're at the pace now where we're impacting on a monthly basis around 20,000 lives. And almost every month that number grows from the month before. And that's the direct impact we're having. That doesn't even fully in any way calculate the indirect impact we're able to make, which is pretty exciting to think about and know that we're in the beginning stages of this. And one of the best ways that we can make the most significant impact is at these events. And, at the event we have coming up here in Asheville, we do these events, 3 times a year, these big types of events where we bring in, real estate operators, builders, developers, business owners who are there focused on building an elite organization, which is what the book I just recently wrote is called, Building Elite Organization. That's what we're helping these companies do: build an elite organization, and build an elite organization around providing and creating safe, affordable workforce housing, right? So we're both helping these operators create jobs and create workforce housing and build organizations that lead to them hiring and developing happy team members who are living fully, and helping these business owners build their organizations around the mindset of building a legacy. And then at the same time, as we meet with these business owners, we also have another set of leaders of families there who are focused on building their investments, building their ability to make an impact through their investments, and again, live and leave a legacy. This is our prosperity membership, our prosperity family, wealth, and legacy membership. And pretty exciting. And in between these two groups, we're going to have somewhere around 400 wealth creators, 400 leaders at this event, focused on improving themselves, the growth mindset you mentioned earlier, and bringing in some unbelievable speakers, outstanding content to help us all be inspired and figure out how we can work together to make the biggest impact on these crises and many others. As certainly we know there are a tremendous list of priorities and crises and opportunities out there to make an impact on, above and beyond what we're focused on here at DLP.
I love the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal. And one of the things at the conference is you will learn about what that means. You'll learn about the elite execution system, which is the operating system that DLP uses to run all the different businesses. And frankly, many other companies are using it as well and seeing great results. So in terms of BHAG, so if you're listening, you could say, maybe you're saying to yourself, well, what's my BHAG? What should my family's BHAG be? So I'll share kind of a personal one. So my wife and I and 2 boys, our BHAG is to bring 300,000 people from working poverty to middle class or higher. And I was kind of updating these numbers last night, and we are over 100,000 people so far.
Wow! Congratulations! That's awesome.
Thank you. And I'm still not done with updating the numbers, because we've also allocated to DLP, which is having an amazing impact. So we're going to blow through this. We're going to blow through our BHAG, thanks to DLP and all the great work of our teammates and our stakeholders, our investors that are helping us kind of accelerate this growth. So I'm going to have to change that number, Don. I'm going to have to, and I'll circle back with you and let you know where I land. But the impact we're having is incredible. So it's really fun for me. I feel like I'm in a sweet spot because we have a kind of my family's small and humble impact entity. And then I'm also a part of DLP. We have our foundation, we have our funds. So I feel like I'm a pretty lucky guy. So happy to be making a small and meaningful impact.
Well, it's an amazing impact. And I love in a moment, but maybe touch on one of the main ways you've been helping people move from poverty into middle class. But it is exciting times for sure. There's never been a better time, especially if you're living in the United States. Never been a better time to be able to make an impact. It's exciting and humbling for sure. So Bo, the upcoming event here, one of the cool things that we're going to roll out, and in my book, Building Elite Organization, we talk about a tool that we've developed to be able to build elite organizations, a tool called the Compass, which is about setting, having really clear core values, setting a BHAG, having a clear purpose and a mission, and setting clear goals to be able to go out there and drive your organization forward in making an impact. And at our upcoming event here in Asheville, we're going to be training on an amazing tool we've developed over the past year for families who want to, live and leave a legacy and avoid this, legacy crisis. We call the Family Compass, which helps you go about developing clear family values and a clear family BHAG like you have, Bo, and charting out, your checkpoints for your family, avoiding falling down this process of this legacy crisis through great communication, through alignment on impact, and education of your family. And we're going to be rolling out at the event for the first time a reasonably new tool here we call the Personal Compass, which is helping us each grow individually in growing, figuring out who we are, what we want to accomplish, and what legacy we want to leave. What do we want people to say at our eulogy? And we built a really amazing tool called the Personal Compass to help us figure that out and be able to go out there and live a life, go out and live a legacy, worth living. And couldn't be more excited about rolling out this tool here at the upcoming event. So, Bo, talk a little bit more about your experience and impact, and I'd love if you could talk, maybe give somebody a tangible example to how you're going out there, because it sounds huge, right? To go out there and take 300,000 people from poverty to middle class, and talk a couple of practical ways that you've been able to do that, and maybe kind of some of the other ways people can find inspiration, ideas on how to do so.
Sure. Happy to. So for those of you listening, Impact Assets is a great organization to go and spend a lot of time on their website. They have a lot of great content. There's a lot of good options for people to explore and learn about. So I definitely check out Impact Assets. They have been speakers at our past events, by the way. So we're big fans of them, and they're big fans of us, which is pretty cool. So a kind of a fun example is there's a company called Tugende, Tugende. And Tugende uses asset finance, technology, and customer-centric models to help. Let me say that again. One cool example that we've been a part of is called Tugende. And Tugende uses asset finance to help improve people's lives. And they're in Africa. And Tugende, it's a great story. There is a Fulbright scholar. He happens to be from Colorado. He went to Uganda on his Fulbright, and he realized that if anyone has been there, they have these, I'm just going to call them motorbike taxis. And that's how you get around, is these motorbike taxis. And he quickly realized that no one could own their own motorbike. So they had to, and what they would earn in a day, most of what they would earn would go towards renting the bike. So they could never own their own bike and start, own an asset. So he basically went on the internet and, imported a couple bikes and just went to the people that he knew that were driving around these motorbikes or these taxis and said, hey, would you want to do a lease to own? And everyone said yes. And because they could immediately go from making basically very little in a day to making a lot more. Their income jumped significantly. So we found Tugende when they had about 400 active clients. So 400 people were doing a rent to own on these motorbike taxis. Now they have 23,000.
Wow.
Okay. 23,000. And on average, a family there will have, just call it 3 to 5 kids. So you can take 23,000 times, 3 or 4, and there's a huge impact there. They do over 35 million in income. They have over 10,000 successful alumni, and they employ about 500 full-time people. And what they've realized is they realized, hey, someone's going to, do a rent to own for a motorbike taxi, and then they're going to want to do another one, and then they're going to want to do another one. And that actually wasn't the case. And that's not true. And some people do that. But what they were finding is that, hey, my wife, has a salon business, or we need a sewing machine. So now they're doing asset financing on salon equipment, sewing machines, smartphones, and they've mushroomed into this great organization. And Tugende is an example of a company that's doing great things in Africa. So that's
awesome.
a fun one.
Yeah, that's a great example. All forms of micro lending, and it can be a great way to stretch your impact many times over as that money gets repaid. Not only does that make a positive impact, because most people would rather get a hand up than a handout, and be able to give them money they have to repay actually improves and has been proven to increase the value that's perceived, and the pride that comes from now business owner of owning one of these motorbikes. But it also allows you to stretch your investment, your giving many times over, as you're able to reuse that money time and time again, which is tremendous. And that's a great example of impact investing. So Bo, it's been truly a pleasure. I'm so excited that we got to kick this show off here together with this first episode. I cannot wait to bring in some of these incredible leaders who are going to help us all, including you and I, further expand and frame our way of thinking of how we can, all make a difference, make an impact here together and individually. And hopefully you'll be able to join us here again, Bo, in future episodes. And I can't wait to be a part of the impact you and your family are making through your foundation and what we all here do together. So thank you, Bo. Any final words you'd like to wrap us up here with today?
Yeah, a few things. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Don. It's an honor and privilege to be here. So thank you. I look forward to seeing you in Asheville and the many other people in Asheville as well, DLP fans. So for those of you listening, hopefully we can see you in Asheville or at one of our next events. This is hopefully everyone here has learned at least one or two things, perhaps three or four, and they have some good take-home value.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bo. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time, and let's make an impact.
This has been Don Wenner on the Impact Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. You can check out our other episodes by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube, or check us out online by going to impactwithdon.com. I encourage and challenge you to make an impact.